If a housekeeper believes they're part of the clinical family, they're going to interact differently. If you go into a facility and you make those guys feel like they're just a janitor or a housekeeper and they just there to clean up, then they're going to look at a difference. Kimberly and a lot of the nurses at UCHealth do a great job making our housekeepers feel like they're part of the UCHealth family.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Let's Talk Solutions, candid conversations with healthcare leaders. I'm Amy Fritzer.
And I'm John Amos. And this week on the podcast, we're discussing the importance of the relationship between EVS and nursing, how to build a healthy collaborative working relationship between those two departments, and just how important it is to have communication, to build healthy relationships, and how that can make all the difference when it comes to doing the important work of really saving lives.
Well, today we're joined by two very special guests, and we're so excited for them to be here. Willie Nash, who's Director of EVS at UCHealth Memorial Hospital in Colorado, and then Kimberly Weber, who is Clinical Manager of the Surgical Trauma Unit there at UCHealth, and she oversees a pretty large team with over 54 nurses and CNAs. So welcome again, Willie and Kimberly, and thank you guys for joining us, and let's go ahead and get started.
Kimberly and Willie, thanks so much for joining us today. We're super excited to have you here and have a candid conversation with you guys. Wanted to start with just hearing about each of you guys' background and kind of how you got into healthcare. And Kimberly, I'd love to start with you just on your nursing experience and how you got to where you are today.
You're going to start with me?
Yeah.
Willie's more interesting.
I doubt it.
Yeah, I have actually worked for Memorial Hospital since 2005. And prior to us being with UCHealth, affiliated with UCHealth, we were the local community hospital. So I actually started here as a CNA. My previous life experience, I guess, as job-wise, I was a social worker and worked with people with special needs. So I did that for quite a while and then decided to go back to nursing school since it was my real passion. I started working as a nurse, as a brand new grad nurse here, both at Memorial and then here on my surgical trauma floor. So I've actually been on this unit for a long time. I came here, Memorial, and it was very intentional. I had the opportunity to accept a scholarship for either hospital, and I chose intentionally to work for Memorial primarily because we do serve a broader population. And I have been the clinical manager here on surgical trauma since 2015. So I am actually the longest running clinical manager that this unit has ever had in recent history. So I don't know what that makes me more of a glutton for punishment or if it says something about me, my character, but I guess it depends on the day.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Well, and Willie, your background and perspective is pretty interesting. I mean, before you became an EVS director, you were a longtime tour manager for a popular hip hop artist, and you hit the road a lot during the year. You were traveling and living that exciting life, and managing day-to-day operations and a tour and all that fun stuff. And so, what made you kind of move into healthcare?
Well, like you said, my family would say that I took the long route to healthcare, right? I come from 3 generations of nurses. I've been in healthcare with those guys my whole life, right? I remember on days the hospital was my daycare some evenings. But I never wanted to be here. So I went to school, went to undergrad, major in international business, and I came out and I started working for Universal Motown. And loved it. I thought that, I was going to be on the road forever. I started 2001, right? 21-year-old, bushy tail, making 6 figures, thought that it was the life, right? 2009, something like Napster came and all these burning of CDs and all this stuff. And so I went from top 3% in the company, working for David Banner, his tour manager, to just being upside down and almost having to take a half pay cut in order to stay there. So thought about grad school. my mother is deceased, and she was a 20-year nurse, and I promised her that I was going to get a master's degree, right? So after 9 years being in entertainment, I was accepted to Oral Roberts, graduated top 3 of my class, and still didn't know what I wanted to do, right? So I went back to Jackson, Mississippi, because you never know what, you don't know. I never thought about the health disparities in Jackson, right? So I went back and worked on side a nonprofit, Mississippi Roadmap to Health Equity, did great work there. Executive Director Bonita Burke was just amazing. We was working with reversing childhood obesity. Actually was there. I was nominated for the Jefferson Award by the White House. Great times, loved it, thought I had found my new career. And then the Kellogg Foundation said that, hey, we're not going to fund you guys any longer. And so my grandmother at that time was just like, see, we told you, healthcare is the way, right? And so she was like, the hospital she worked in for 30 years, she was like, can I call and get you an interview? And of course I said yes at that time, after coming out of entertainment and being devastated because you don't have that job anymore. And then the nonprofit sector wasn't the way for me. I went in and I started in patient access, became the manager there, came into a fellow position. And my father came home one day, and I never forget, he gave me the worst news of my life and told me he had lung cancer. And he had 2 years to live. And so he was a veteran. We was going to celebrate those 2 years. But he went to a facility and he acquired C. diff. And at that time, I didn't know what an HAI was. I didn't know what C. diff was. I didn't know anything about that part of it. You don't know what you don't know. And instead of us having him for 2 years, I lost him in October 21st of 2009, a year and a half early. It was at that time I think I went into maybe the 2-3 month depression. I just really couldn't think because at that point I was in a fellow position and I was thinking about administration work, but it was a gap that was being missed in the cleaning process, right? It was a gap that was being missed among hospitals, and I just wanted to find that gap. And so one of my friends worked for HHS. They gave me Tommy Gray's phone number. I gave him a call. He asked me to meet him at Applebee's. He offered me $50,000 less than what I was making. And 7 years later, here I am.
What a neat story.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Willie.
Yeah.
Your passion, Willie, it's so obvious. And there was a recent story on you, actually in our company website. And I just love this quote. I just love to read it if that's okay with you. But you said, for me, healthcare and the music industry are relatively the same. Music is supposed to be soulful and an outlet for people to feel better. We try to do the same thing with housekeeping in our facility. We want patients to feel better and feel cared for. And it sounds like that was kind of, after your father's passing and all that it was kind of like a calling for you almost.
And not only a calling, it's a passion. And I believe everything happens for a reason. And I truly believe this is my calling. And that statement is exactly how I feel. Music was my first calling. I mean, I loved it. I still love it. I'm still in contact with a lot of the guys that's in the industry. And I noticed how when we was on the road, we would have college kids and different people come up and tell different artists how, hey, this song changed my life. Hey, you got me through college. So when I came to healthcare, it was kind of the same thing. I wanted to make sure that we never put any one family member in a bed that I wouldn't put mine in. I know what's the dire impact of us having high SIR rates, not having the proper HAIs. I understand how dynamic that can be to a family to lose a family member to something of that dynamic, right? And so every day when I come into work, my overall goal is to think, how can I lead the facility better than it was when I got here? Who can I impact today? I have this motto that I tell all of my assistant directors, and I ask them to let me know at the end of the day, are we takers or givers today? Not that neither one is wrong, but I just want to know, what did we take or what did we give back? Like if we were rounding on a patient and it's their birthday and they don't have family members? Are we taking flowers? Are we delivering balloons? Are we asking Miss Kimberly, can we bring them their favorite meal? Right? Are we taking something from them? Are we listening to their stories and we incorporating it in our life? And so like we have this model where my season directors, they will walk by and say, "Hey, Willie, I was a taker today." And so the question just to be like, "What did you take?" And it may be in 65-25, I took that I need to be a better father, right? I need to listen to my kids a little more. One of my directors may say, "Willie, I was a giver today." What did you give? I gave 25 minutes of my time when you tell me I should only give 10. I actually sat down and listened to a patient concern. So every day is vital. It's just like music. At the end of the day, we can make people better people for just interacting, just being caring, just having two things, empathy and sympathy.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think that, to do that well in a hospital, you obviously have to do that in partnership with nursing, right? Which is kind of the topic and the theme of this conversation is how do you collaborate with nursing, to have that kind of care for patients and to make a hospital run well, not just clinically, but just, supporting patients through and through. So I kind of want to just start off the conversation in that regard, just asking, why is that relationship between nursing and EVS so important?
Well, I think for me, that relationship is absolutely fundamental in a couple of different spectrums. When Willie's talking a little bit about, the hospital-acquired infections and what exactly that means for some of our patients, it's definitely a challenge because when patients are here in the hospital, they're not expecting to get sicker from something that was basically unplanned. And it's heart-wrenching to hear Willie's story about his dad and why that was the ultimate, form of his demise was a hospital-acquired infection. And that's certainly something that as a nurse, never, ever do we want to have happen. I know for myself, I'm a huge people person. I am not I'm not super data driven, and I'm very different from a lot of my colleagues in that I pay attention to the data, of course, because I have to. But at the same time, I'm a very much a people person, and that definitely inspired my relationship with Willie. Until we started doing this process of preparing for this podcast, I had absolutely no idea what his background was. I just knew that he was a very easygoing guy, super nice, super easy to get to know, super snappy dresser. Until COVID hit, we all looked a lot prettier than we do now. But it certainly it drew me to him in that I knew that he was a people person as well. And so, we just started off kind of giving each other a hard time. But I also, previously to having HHS come in, had gone to battle for our housekeeper on our unit. Her name is Lorna, and she's probably the biggest integral part of our unit right now, as far as housekeeping is concerned, because she is part of our family. We had the previous company prior to IHHS was actually looking to move her over to another facility or another part of our facility. And initially I protested, and then they relented and we got to keep her. And then another year later, they came back and said, "Oh, we need to take her again." And I'm just like, yeah, so I already told you no. And they gave me some big, long sob story about this other unit that really needed help. And so, me being the beating heart, I'm like, oh, all right, we can sacrifice to help someone else. Well, when the word came out that she was going to be transferred over to another unit, my staff actually wrote a letter protesting her being moved. And I think for Lorna, that seemed to make a huge impression on her because she knew that while she's part of housekeeping and she's, a contracted person and she's not a nurse and, but she is so good at what she does. And I think for her, it helped her to understand and know how very important she was to us. We definitely treat her as a member of our family. When she travels home to Jamaica, she brought stuff back from all of my staff members. It's just like, when Mama goes on a trip, Mama brings home something. And Lorna, we threw a big 60th birthday party for her because she's part of our family and we adore her. And we give her a lot of grief because she takes days off, which is not really okay. Actually, I said to her last night when she said she came in to say goodbye, and I said, I'll see you tomorrow. And she said, no, I had the day off tomorrow. And I said, I did not approve that. She said, well, I'll be back on Friday. And I said, huh. I already know that she's off. I've had 2 of my staff members come in and say, is Lorna here today? So we are all very aware when she's here. And I think that piece of it is because I know she does right by our patients. I know there have been multiple times where she's come in to me and said, I need you to talk to your staff about such and such. And immediately I'm on it. And my staff are like, oh, okay, we'll do anything for Lorna. And to us, that person connection is huge. And I know that our patients notice it as well. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. She's definitely the best thing ever. And Willie and I have a good relationship mostly because we both speak fluent sarcasm. So I can totally give him as much as he dishes out.
Absolutely.
So on that note, obviously we each understand how, the nursing department and nurses are tremendously important. And then obviously the housekeeping staff is so important. But why is it so important for them to work in tandem? I mean, obviously to help the patient heal, but what other things do they do behind the scenes that helps a facility run and, brings added value to the patient?
Well, first of all, Willie will do just about anything if I ask him to. He told me that he was going on vacation. I think this summer he was gone he went to the Northwest for a couple of weeks. And I said, well, who am I supposed to call? It's so integral for us to be able to know who we can count on. And, a couple of months ago, we did this bed exchange program and Willie was up here with his staff members and, nursing kept trying to kind of clean the dirty beds and swap over the new mattresses. And we were doing it wrong. Oh my gosh, we kept doing it wrong. And he was like, you need to stay in your lane, get over there, stay in your lane, do what you're supposed to do. But you can put the mattress on the bed, but please don't do any more other things. I mean, he's right. We're totally doing it wrong. So I think for us, that's, the behind the scenes stuff is by far the most important. I can call him any time of the day and he will either be up here himself or he'll send somebody up here to help us clean things up and make things right for our unit to function better.
What about from your perspective, Willie?
I think Kimberly is 100% correct, right? From an administrative standpoint, from a CEO standpoint or a COO standpoint, it's the KPIs. It's turnaround time. If we don't work together, we can't get patients in and out of the hospital. We all know that we're in a pandemic and our census here in Colorado Springs is overwhelming. And so if we don't have that one-on-one relationship, hypothetically, you may be in a hospital where nursing may be responsible for contractually scripting rooms, right? If we don't have that relationship to where we're fully staffed to where we can help those guys, it can bag up that next patient that needs to come in. Right. And so that's very important to us. Just wait time. I think, when we came in this morning, maybe we had 20 people waiting in our ED. That lets me know as soon as I get that call that I need to be on the floor, just like Kimberly said, round and seeing where my people are, anticipating discharges and building those relationships so that nurses like Kimberly feel comfortable with calling me, feel comfortable with leading that charge. we are so connected hip to hip. Honestly, I can't do my job without having a Kimberly on board, and she can't do her job without me. And I feel comfortable saying that because of our relationship. I think the dynamic of having two departments that lean on each other for so many reasons, whether that's linen, whether that's room turnover, whether that's no more than, Willie, I need an extra linen picked up that we're not scheduled to do. Or, hey, Willie, I'm short of tech today. Can you guys script the rooms? Just having that open line of communication makes everything flow so much better.
Just tell her no.
You tried. Good luck with that. She doesn't even know what that word means.
Never even dare try. Poor guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Willie, weren't you telling us, and we were initially kind of talking about doing this conversation together, and you had mentioned how you call Kimberly Mama Bear.
She's programming my phone as that. Like my kids and my family know about her. It's just that dynamic, it's rare that you are able to feed off of people and you're there for the right reason, right? My passion brought me to healthcare. I just be honest, this is not where I wanted to be. Life led me here. So to find people that's just engaged that I am, and we're here for the same reason, it makes it easy for me to do what I do. And on top of that, she keeps me in line. I'm easily can run astray, right? I'm easily can do my own thing. She makes sure that I doesn't. So I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, the first time he appeared in front of my door, I had just been fighting with the previous company, and he appeared in my doorway, and I'm like, no, he didn't even ask me anything. And I said, somebody introduced him. This is Willie, and he's the new, clinical manager of EVS or whatever your fancy title is. And I don't care. You're just Willie. I can't even remember what you are on my phone. I think you're Willie Snappy Dresser, I think is what it says. But anyway, he appears in my doorway. Hi, this is Willie, la, 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 la. And I just looked at him and I said, no, you don't get to take Lorna. I don't care what you say. And it's not happening. And don't double dog dare you to fight me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we get along really well, which makes a huge difference, I think.
Wait, so what was Willie's side of that story?
Well, for me, I'm always the guy. She throws a dish, I throw it back, right? So initially, when she says no, you can't have her, my next comment is, I'm definitely having to move her. That's like this is what we're doing. We have to move her. We need her. But to be honest, guys, I would have never moved her. Like, I am a big believer that perception drives performance, meaning the way you think about something affects the way you do something, right? So in healthcare, if a housekeeper believes they're part of the clinical family, if they believe that they have buy-in, if they believe that they're one of the nurses, if they believe that floor, they're part of that floor, they're going to interact differently. If you go into a facility and you make those guys feel like they're just a janitor or a housekeeper and they just there to clean up, then they're going to look at a difference. Kimberly and a lot of the nurses at UC Health do a great job making our housekeepers feel like they're part of the UC Health family, right? So I would dare never move a housekeeper from one of their floors because that's the dynamic that we want. We want Miss Lorna to be able to come in and be able to tell Kimberly, hey, Tech A forgot to do this today. Can we talk to them? And she has to feel comfortable in doing that, as well as she has to feel comfortable enough that Kimberly has her best interests in hand so she can take constructive criticism the right way. So whereas I gave her a hard time and told her on numerous occasions I was going to take her, I would never do that, and she knows it.
Well, and my response to him was, fine, you can go ahead and take Lorna, but I get Margaret.
See? And Miss Margaret is another great one that I get kicked out the hospital if I moved her as well. So,
Oh man, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, shifting gears a little bit, I kind of want to hear from both of you guys on just the dynamics, obviously between EVS and nursing, but how much administrators are aware of that, and how much they get involved in managing that, or do they not get involved? Do they have a good pulse on how the relationship is going? Do you look to them for guidance, or how is that dynamic between the administrator level and then you guys and what you're doing day to day?
Well, for me, it's pretty easy. Here at UC Health, we have a great administrative team, and they really get it. I have been in hospitals that didn't really get the dynamic of why we need to play good in the sandbox together, right? And my first question is, once I go into an account, is I love to meet with that leader, because it's a top-down approach. It's not a bottom-up approach, right? They have to lead the way. They have to lead the surge. So with me knowing my value, and within my first 10 days within a facility, I want to meet with whoever the COO is, whoever my direct report. And I want to hear some of the complaints that they might have in between nursing and they might have in between EVS, right? And majority of 99% of the time is culture. Is that the EVS team doesn't feel like they are part of whatever organization they're in. So I always ask them a challenging question, and it makes them having to go back and think sometimes. I say, can we promise each other something? And naturally they say, yes, well, what is it? Or depending on what the promise is. I say, can we never complain about something that we're not willing to change? Right. And so it usually be like, okay, well, what are we complaining about? Well, we're complaining about the culture, because we're complaining about EVS not showing up and doing the things that nursing needs to do. And nursing is saying is EVS is not doing there. Maybe it's a possibility it's a communication barrier. Maybe housekeeper A doesn't know what nurse A needs. Because one thing I believe everyone is in healthcare for a reason. I think we all understand the dynamic. I think we all understand patients need to be taken care of, and we all understand why we do what we do. A lot of times it's that culture shift that housekeepers just want to feel like they belong. And so a lot of the times, once I tell those COOs that are my direct report, that most of this time they try to make that culture shift. And 99% of the time, once we make that shift, it naturally works.
So that's your number one piece of advice for them, Willie, is basically take a closer look at the culture, maybe look how they integrate the relationship more, basically?
Absolutely. I can guarantee you, if you're running a facility and you're having problems in between your housekeeping department, not just one housekeeper, the department, and your nursing department, is a culture shift.
And I think, to kind of tag that on, I'm not really familiar with a lot of the upper echelon of housekeeping, which is really okay, because that's not my specialty. I know the nursing and the clinical side of what it's like to run a hospital. And one of the things that I've worked here for 15 years. So one of the things that I've experienced a great deal of is different leadership and how each facility is run probably in a very different way. And I had, unfortunately, a bad experience previously when I first stepped into leadership, of having very much being part of a dictatorship and very much being part of a facility that was run from the top down, and you basically stood in line and handle things the way that you were told you needed to handle them. The way the shift in the culture has changed in the last couple of years has been absolutely incredible. And I think Willie is part of that, but also feeling the benefits of that change for us personally in this hospital, in that we finally have some really stable leadership. We are not owned by the county anymore, or by the city anymore, which is a big boon for us. But also our CNO, our chief nursing officer, is a homegrown Memorial nurse. So she has worked here in the trenches here at Memorial for a very long time. Our COO is super, super approachable. And several years ago, they came up with the idea that each senior leader needs to adopt a unit, basically. And Merle, who is actually the COO, is, I believe, Willie's direct report, is the actual senior leader that has adopted, that is my unit's sponsor, I guess is the best way of looking at it. And Merle, I have his cell phone number. I forget sometimes, and I'm not reminded of it regularly that he's the COO. He's just Merle. And so if I need something, I will text Merle. And I'll just, and I'm middle management. I'm not super fancy. I don't have a master's degree. I am a bachelor's trained nurse, and I have no desire to be a director. I don't want to be a CNO when I grow up. I love working with my team, and I absolutely love the job that I have. Some days it's not all that great, but I do love the job. And to have the opportunity to be able to just shoot a text to my COO and say, hey, we're really struggling with X, Y, and Z, and to have him respond to me and say, okay, let me see what I can do to fix that. That culture cannot be bought. And so I think that Willie benefits from that as well, because it's definitely our culture here at Memorial. That is how we approach things. And it's pervasive throughout all of our administrative areas, which is a big chunk of progress, I feel like.
Yeah. So it seems like, and both of you have mentioned communication being a big part of that. And I'm curious what you guys have in place formally and informally. I know you're talking about texting and stuff, but what you guys have in place to kind of enhance that communication, and is that something that has evolved over time? I'm just kind of curious what you guys do to establish that flow of communication between yourselves.
Well, I mean, I think for Willie and I, of course, are very casual. I don't, I'm not going to, rarely do I ever send him an email. I'll just either call him or text him and just say, yo, come here, please. I need you for something. But, and then he'll show up when he darn well feels like it. No, I'm just he shows up. A couple of weeks ago, he was in his scrubs and I hardly even recognized him. I've gotten used to it now, but I'm like, what you doing? You're down here with the scrub people. You're wearing your jammies to work just like all the rest of us. We actually, our facility actually developed a operations meeting that we have on a daily basis, which I think in the beginning was quite a nightmare for our IT department and probably Willie, because it's kind of what in the beginning was kind of like the airing of grievances. We spent an awful lot of time in a 15-minute meeting kvetching about how this thing didn't go right and this thing didn't go right. And sometimes Willie would get the brunt of that. But I believe that it was actually developed by our COO. And so every morning at 8:45, we have an operations meeting with the leaders of the hospital, and we go on and talk about some of the issues that have come up in the last day, which can cover all kinds of different things. And I think that process has really helped kind of hone in on where our actual issues are. And like if it took 2 hours for me to get a bed up here from housekeeping, then Willie and I are able to communicate. We talk about it on this meeting, because 9 times out of 10, if I'm struggling, if my unit is struggling, then it's probably happening other places as well. And we kind of hone in on those processes and really look to see what we can do to process improve and fix the process so that we're not just fixing a one isolated problem all the time, which is really good. We had an issue, and Willie, you may not even remember this, I think it's probably been about a year or so. It was before COVID, so it feels like it was about 5 years ago. But that being said, we had a patient that fell, and she was actually accidentally placed on a trial bed that none of our staff were even familiar with or knew how to utilize or anything. And so, of course, she unfortunately sustained an injury on her fall. And Willie and I had to do quite a bit of digging so that we could actually figure out where this bed even came from, because it was something that we had never, ever seen before. Housekeeping had never seen it. I'd never seen it. My staff had never seen one of these beds, and it was brought up here in the middle of the night. So I think those communication things are just super important, because we don't want, if it's an isolated issue, great, but most of the time it isn't. It's a pervasive process problem, and that's what this morning meeting really is to kind of narrow down exactly where we're falling apart in the processes and what can we do to make things smoother. Plus, it does help develop those relationships. We can match names with faces, and I know exactly who to come to if I'm struggling with a particular issue. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, you guys have an amazing relationship and totally illustrate the value of that. And Willie, you had mentioned, kind of backing up a little bit here, that you had, worked at other facilities where the relationship wasn't as great or the culture wasn't there. So how would you begin? And I understand, 9 out of 10 times you say, okay, well, the culture needs to change, or, we need to look at this differently. But how would you go about doing that as a director, an EVS director? I mean, obviously there's so many departments that you infiltrate with, so to speak. So how would you go about that?
So the first thing that I have learned to do is build relationships, right? Everything I do is based off relationship. It has to be a trust factor there in some way. So initially when I come into the facility, I like to break that facility down into mini hospitals, meaning I want to give every last one of my ADs as well as myself a certain part of the hospital. And then I like to create what we call a collaborative round matrix. And within that matrix, we're going to round on, I'm going to take all the directors. I want all the Kimberlys. I want all the dynamics. I want all the character. I want all of the people who's going to say, I'm not working with them. They just, I want all the tough customers, right? Outside of having all those guys, I want to round on those guys once a week, just to show them our dynamic. What we do is HHS. We're a new company. We're nothing like whoever else may have been here or whatever they went through before, whether that was the previous director or the previous company. And we want to build those relationships and those trust factors day in and day out. So every week, Kimberly is going to see Willie. Every week I'm going to get on her nerves. Every week I'm going to ask. Every week I'm going to ask her text. How are we doing? We create surveys that we send out to those guys just to ask, how are we doing this week? Can we do anything different? What do we need to learn? And in between there, you'll find that, hey, it may be some communication issues. It may be some buried issues. Maybe they really don't understand what we do. And we build on it, as well as rounding on patients. We want to go in and we want to talk up the nursing on the staff. We want to let them know how great of a nurse they have. But in order to do that, we have to learn who Kimberly really is. We have to understand where she come from. We have to understand her background. So for me coming in, even if it's a culture issue, it's just inserting myself inside of their culture to let them know whether they want me or not, they're stuck with me, right? And we're going to make this a better environment for not only for us to work in, but for the patients that's come here to serve.
Are you saying I'm part of your matrix?
Yeah,
I didn't know I was part of a matrix.
You're definitely part of my matrix.
Dude.
Number one.
I knew I was fancy. I didn't know I was Keanu Reeves fancy.
You are there. You are there. And so now what you see now is the dynamic between me and Kimberly 2 years down the line. She don't even need to be part of the matrix. I can just spoof up to her office. I don't even have to have an appointment. I can just roll in. And that's
if you had an appointment, I think I was in trouble.
Yeah. And so that's what you want. I can even call her, Kimberly, and she hates being called that, and she doesn't get mad.
No, I hate being called Kim. You even got it wrong.
Yeah, well, you know what I'm talking about. And so we have that dynamic, and I pride myself on my team as well as myself having that dynamic in every hospital we go into. Sometimes you have to work a little harder. Sometimes you have to start at the bottom. Sometimes that culture is already there. Like UCHealth already had that culture when we came in. We just had to insert ourselves. But if we had to start from the beginning, it would start on just those rounding, getting to know those nurses, letting those nurses get to know us, let them know our platform. And hey, we're all here for the same reason.
Being visible, almost too visible.
Yeah, too visible. Get out
annoying.
of my office.
Being annoying is what you meant.
I don't want to see you anymore. Leave me alone.
Yeah, go away, because every time you come up here, I think you're going to take my Lorna.
So you have this relationship that you guys have built up, and it's obviously incredible. And then you put it in the context of obviously the last 18 months with COVID. And I'm curious how that has changed or improved the dynamic and the relationship between, nursing and EVS, but specifically in ways that you're going about ensuring safety. I'm just curious how the context of being in the pandemic has impacted the relationship you guys have.
Well, for us, I am because I'm a surgical unit. We and only word I can think of is that we're blessed a little bit in that we haven't had the inundation of COVID patients that a lot of the other units have had, primarily because our patients are what we would consider clean patients, because they're coming in hopefully not sick. However, the last 6 weeks, things have really shifted and a lot of things have changed here in our facility and in our community, where we're really seeing some incredible spikes of COVID. And, I think because, like I told you before, I'm definitely a people person. One of the things that has, it's helped that we have this dynamic already established, because to put a health system or to put a hospital or to put nursing staff or clinical staff or housekeeping staff under the incredible amount of pressure that we're all experiencing right now sometimes doesn't bring out the best in people. And it doesn't bring out, our patients are very, very ill. Right at the moment, we're not doing a whole lot of elective surgeries. We're not doing a whole lot of optional things. And so our patients are coming in more critically ill than they ever have been. And so I think putting that incredible just amount of pressure on a facility and everything, you have to have those relationships that are already very well established in order for us to be successful. Because if I'm running at an elevated emotional level, like a lot of our facility is right now, and so is housekeeping, a lot of times we're not on our best behavior. And so we are, I think because we've got that decent relationship where we feel like we are already family, I guess is the way of looking at it, we can treat each other with a much more amount of grace, I think. And to realize that everybody has their bad days. And if I completely, turn into my crazy redheaded self with Willie one day, he knows me well enough to know that that's not who I really am. And then I know him well enough that I can go back and say, hey, I totally overstepped. I became a crazy woman and I need you to forgive me and let's move on. Whereas if we didn't have that relationship before, it would be very challenging, I think. It puts a huge amount of stress on the facility completely. And then you look at it from the infection piece of it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has to go on in the background in order to keep our patients from cross-contaminating or getting a hospital-acquired infection from COVID as well.
I agree 100%. From our perspective, when COVID first hit, it's three things that we understood. We knew it was a storm, and we understood that most storms was going to change you, right? But we also knew that all storms has an expiration date. So we just needed to make it through that storm, right? So we just had to figure out how to navigate a little bit better. And I think, like Kimberly said, whenever you have those wonderful relationships, whenever you understand those dynamics, it's easier for you to attach yourself to it. I never forget the first day we received a call. In January, February, we was hearing about COVID, and I was pessimistic. we'll never get a case here. It was, for me, it was kind of like Ebola. So I never thought that it would happen to us. We received a call one Saturday. I was off, and Miss Martha received on her floor, and she called, and she was like, what are we going to do? I'm not fearful of this. It's an isolation room, but what are we going to do? And initially, my first thought process, because my wife was looking at me and the dog was looking at me like, are you really going? and I had to say absolutely, because not only did Miss Margaret call me, the nurses called me from the floor, and they just wanted insurance that we was there and prepared to do the right thing. So I showed up, me and Miss Margaret, both PPD together, and we fought that storm together. And when we both came out and we donned our PPE, it was nursing that was there. They clapped for us, and it's those relationships. It's those things that's knowing that, hey, they really have our back. Hey, we're not just housekeepers or janitors to them. Hey, we're family. So it's easy to fight these COVID battles, these pandemics when you have a family around you that you guys all feel the same about each other.
I absolutely agree. I don't necessarily, this is a sobering experience. One of our directors said to us last week when we were all really struggling, because we're struggling because it's the long haul. We don't see the end of the storm. We don't even know where the eye of the storm is at this point. And so we're struggling because we're all exhausted. We are struggling because, just like the rest of parts of the country, we're struggling with staffing. We're struggling with just keeping our head above water and having the right people working and doing what they can. And those of us that are super, super dedicated to working and taking care of our patients, it's creating a weary group of souls. However, I know that all of us, and the thinning of the herd, I guess the best way to look at it when we've lost so many staff, and not to say that they were all not worth keeping, but those of us that are still here are the strong, the ones that are here for the right reasons. I pride myself in knowing that I want to live my life and have my career be so that every single day I can look myself in the mirror when I get home and know that I did my best with whatever it is that I have to do. We have learned very, very much to be flexible. Nursing is not typically a very flexible arena. We are very black and white. You have this disease, you treat it this way, you have this job that you have to do, you do this. We're all very task oriented, and we have learned to really bend and flex and do some things that we have never, ever been comfortable with before. But like I was mentioning, one of our directors said the other day, this is the most difficult time that as leaders you will ever lead your team through. And I take that very, very seriously. My staff and my people here at the hospital are my people. And I am proud to work for an organization that has done nothing but support us during this process and during when we are basically on our knees trying to take care of people and to save them. And I'm very, very thankful to have all the people that are around us, from our dietary staff to our housekeeping staff to our senior leadership. Every one of them have been doing their very, very best and doing their hardest work. And it's an honor for me to know that I am shoulder to shoulder with amazing people fighting a war that at this moment doesn't seem to ever have an end.
That's a very sobering explanation there, Kimberly.
No, that was great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it was great. Except for Willie, right? I mean,
except for Willie. Yeah. And even when he wears his scrubs, I just put him to work.
She does that without scrubs.
That's awesome. Well, I think in wrapping up, if we just had to take away kind of the highlights from the conversation, what would kind of the big takeaways be for you guys in terms of, what are the most important aspects of the relationship between nursing and EVS? What are the takeaways from this conversation that you want to leave kind of the listeners with?
I think just keeping those lines of communication open, always using humor. We all in healthcare have a pretty sick sense of humor. So I'm sure housekeeping does as well. And, just keeping and treating each other with grace and kindness, and just keeping that level of communication open and realizing how important all of us are in the wheel. It's, that adage of how it takes a village to raise your children. It definitely takes a village to take care of a patient and to keep them safe. And we just power through. And I think also just developing those good relationships and keeping that alive, regardless of whether it's, Kimberly and Willie or anybody else, just keeping that relationship open and just talking.
What about you, Willie?
I feel the same. I would tell everyone, this is healthcare, right? No matter what side of the village you are on, we save lives. It's not about a us or a I. It's about the people we serve. And we have to know the way that we service people will lead them to be better every day. So when we go in, we need to understand that, hey, we're doing something that's going to drastically impact somebody's life in one way or another. And I think as long as we know that and we do what the golden rule is, what my mom used to tell me every day, just treat somebody the way you want to be treated. I think everything else will fix itself.
No, that's great. Well, I can't thank you guys enough for sharing, all the stories you guys have shared and sharing just y'all's relationship with us. It's great hearing you guys banter back and forth and all that. And you guys had great insights. And just thank you so much.
We did a good job keeping it kind of professional, didn't we?
Yeah. That was the first time. Right? That was the we can celebrate that.
We clean up nice, Willie.
Yes.
You kids listen.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. You guys are great, and just loved hearing, like John said, hearing you guys banter and kind of explain. And it's pretty clear the passion you both have for your respective roles and the importance you both feel for the great relationship and how to just make the facility run better and care for the patients. I think it's great.
Oh, thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
I thought it was so cool listening to Willie talk about how, every day it's, did you take something or did you give something? He wants all of his ADs to answer that question every day and, really bring a purpose to things. And I think that shows not only individually with them and in their respective roles, but also as part of the team and creating that team and atmosphere and culture. Because so many times behind the scenes, people don't realize how integral the relationship is between EVS and nursing, for example. And because a lot of it is behind the scenes, but it's so vital for, each of those departments to run. And then of course the facility to run and the patients to heal. And I think that really came through today from both of them. And I just loved it. Kimberly's just a hoot and funny. And you could tell that as stressful as things have been, they both kind of have a laid back approach at the same time, but that also helps alleviate the stress of the ongoing day to day. Right. So I just thought it was great.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, you could totally tell that they did have kind of like a family type relationship, right? Where they're being sarcastic with each other, giving each other a hard time, but they always know that like we've got each other's back no matter what. So no, it was great.
Yeah. They're almost like a brother-sister kind of relationship, it seems like.
Right. No, totally. Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in and listening. Be sure to follow us so you can hear our next episode with another healthcare leader, wherever you guys listen to your podcasts. And for more tips in healthcare, you can follow the HHS blog at hhs1.com. We'll see you guys next time.